How's it going, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. And it's no secret that I am a big fan of Apple products. And while I initially resisted for fear of getting locked in, a while ago, I fully embraced the Apple ecosystem. And honestly, it's become one of my favorite things about their products. So today, I thought we'd talk about what Apple products I personally use and how they all function together to form my Apple ecosystem. Okay, so starting off strong, we have whatever phone I'm currently using. At the moment, it's this iPhone XR, which is a weird choice for me because this isn't exactly my favorite iPhone, but man, am I a sucker for this coral color. And this thing is essentially my mini personal assistant. This thing is about my person almost all of the time, and I've generally found that recent iPhones have no trouble keeping up with me, and thankfully, this iPhone XR is no exception. You guys can stop bullying me though. I've bought a new daily driver. This temporary phone that I bought, no longer gonna be my daily driver. Not gonna say what it is yet, but it is a huge upgrade over the iPhone XR. So yeah, very much looking forward to that. Of course, there are some hardware limitations to using an iPhone as my everything device. For example, recently, I've actually started using a portable speaker whenever I want to use my iPhone to listen to music around the house, as quite frankly, I found I do just prefer it. Especially when I'm in the shower, the onboard speakers on the iPhone really aren't that loud. Thankfully though, iPhones do have excellent Bluetooth connectivity that make everything easier, even on non-Apple Bluetooth products. For example, a lot of you may know that I used to use the Beats Studio 3s. They were my daily driver headphones for a really long time, and they are actually an Apple product. I did actually recently switch these out for some Bose 700s as my Beats were comically falling apart as much as I liked them. Controversial opinion, I know. And I found my Bluetooth experience has still been excellent. And yeah, that's about it for my phone. I use this thing all of the time, as I'm sure do most people. Next up, we have my MacBook Pro, which is my main editing computer of choice. This is definitely the main device in my ecosystem, and although all of the other devices are very important, the way I use the rest of these products are heavily based around how I use this computer. I do have a PC, but that is mainly a fun machine that I use for things like gaming and voice chatting with my friends, whereas my MacBook Pro is definitely my work machine. My specific MacBook is an upgraded 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro, and personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this machine. I upgraded absolutely everything to the max except for the storage, which was a bad move. I didn't at the time fully understand how M1 worked, so yeah, there have been some problems. Another issue I've had that is I did accidentally crack the screen of this MacBook Pro when I was editing a video, and I accidentally had my phone slide across my keyboard and gently bump into the screen. This thing has survived much worse, but for some reason it wasn't able to survive a light tap from my iPhone corner. That sucks. Nevertheless though, this is still a pretty powerful machine. Honestly, this thing does just rip through video, especially considering the form factor. I have this thing plugged into this 4K LG monitor, along with these PreSonus speakers that I've been using for the longest time, and instead of using the Magic Keyboard that I've been using for a really long time now, I've actually gone back to my roots and started using a mechanical keyboard again. This is the iQ Unix L80. Personally, I love this keyboard. It's a wireless mechanical keyboard. Who doesn't love that? Well, people who don't like wireless stuff, but I do. I'm also using the trusty MX Master. This is the first generation one that I've had for many years at this point, and quite frankly, after all of this time, it's still not letting me down. Some of the apps I keep on this MacBook Pro are, but not limited to, Final Cut, Logic, Lightroom Classic, Photoshop, Adobe Audition, and Premiere Pro. These are definitely my most used creative apps on this machine that I basically use on every single one of these videos. Well, apart from Premiere Pro and Final Cut, I found I actually tend to switch between the two. Generally, if I'm editing on one for too long, I tend to get a little bit bored and set in my ways. All that's truly left to say is, while I wouldn't necessarily recommend this machine for content creation or video editing, it is a very little powerful machine that has powered this YouTube channel for the better part of 2 years. So while I have had my problems with it, and I probably will be upgrading soon, this is my main machine as of now. Up next, we have my cheapskate bargain basement Apple Watch, or as it's actually known, the Apple Watch Series 3 that I bought from CEX for under £100. If you don't know what CEX is, say you're outside of the UK or Ireland, it's essentially a second-hand video game and technology shop that we have here. Now, I got this Apple Watch specifically because I wasn't necessarily sure whether I was gonna like it. Like, I've had a lot of tech in the past that has promised to revolutionize my life and then I've barely used. Like, I've used it for 2 weeks, then it's gone into the drawer forever. I just spilled my tea. However, I'm pleased to say I do use the Series 3 Apple Watch every day. I use it for a number of tasks, including tracking my exercise, managing my mood journal that I have to do for some reason, setting timers, controlling music. It's just another little personal assistant that I have on my wrist without even having to take it out of my pocket. It's also a great sleep tracker, although to be totally honest, I have basically given up on that. It can connect flawlessly to my phone, and while this certainly isn't the newest and lacks a lot of the cool features that are now available on the Apple Watch, I do still think it is a neat little piece of technology and one that I use every single day. Finally, for my little Apple ecosystem, we have every tech YouTuber's favorite piece of technology, namely the iPad Pro. Okay, so remember what I said about my ecosystem being built around this MacBook? Well, a lot of people will base their ecosystems around the iPad, especially students. Like, this is a wildly popular device for university students at the moment because it's lighter than a laptop and it still runs the apps they need to get their work done. But how's my experience with it? To be honest, I used this device significantly less than I initially thought I was going to. I was initially planning to switch my thumbnail creation entirely over to this iPad Pro. However, honestly, I found I just flat out prefer doing it on my MacBook Pro. Unfortunately, I am still very traditional when it comes to the way I edit my photos, and although the iPad Pro is much more intuitive in that regard, the MacBook Pro just worked in the way that I personally prefer. It helps me get what I want faster, despite the iPad Pro being more intuitive. I do also have a knockoff Apple Pencil that I got from Amazon to help with this, but even still, with that increased intuitivity, it's just not for me when it comes to fast-paced editing. However, the iPad Pro definitely does have its strengths. Namely, I'm able to write the script for these videos much faster than on my phone. It's also great for just throwing in my bag and taking somewhere, and if I do want to do some on-the-go photo editing where I really don't need all that power, or if I want to do any photo editing at all anymore thanks to the absolute state of my MacBook, the iPad Pro is definitely the device that I take with me. It's also a pretty powerful little media machine as well. I often find myself preferring to watch videos on the iPad Pro than any other device, as it's small enough to the point where it's not going to be clunky, so I can use it in my lap comfortably, but it's significantly bigger than my iPhone screen. Another thing that I really like the iPad Pro for is a nice little hobby I picked up in 2020. When I want to unwind, I might want to draw, and the iPad Pro is a fantastic little drawing tablet. One of my favorite things that I do are these painty little wallpapers, namely this one behind me. This is one I did a while ago, based around either songs or albums that I really like, or have really liked. It is just a fun little thing that I like to do, even though it is definitely not one of my strengths. Yeah, filming and videography is definitely what I was put on this earth to do. Okay, so all of this is stuff that I use in my Apple ecosystem, but how do they work together? And specifically, what does this add to my life? So when it comes to work, I'll set a timer and turn on work mode on my Apple Watch, as I do work to a Pomodoro method, set up Sidecar on my iPad Pro to give myself a second monitor, and then I'll sit down on my MacBook and dive into whatever I need to do. When I'm on my breaks, I tend to use my phone to check my personal Twitter, maybe I'll take a walk, take some photos, then airdrop them onto my MacBook for editing. I tend to use as many stock apps as possible for this reason as well, as I found everything does just work better together, opposed to if I was using a bunch of separate apps, then it'd be a lot more fragmented and a lot harder for me to do cross-platform stuff. My storage is also synchronized, being that I use iCloud, so if I download a file on one device and put it in my cloud storage, then it will be there on my other devices, which is awesome, especially if I'm editing photos on my iPad Pro. I decided a good while ago that I would essentially try to make everything as synchronized as possible in my digital life, as I didn't really want to be thinking about my technology. I've got really inspired to do this mainly by watching other creators. Basically, I essentially wanted to make it so all of my devices were essentially just like one big device. And so I found with features like handoff and airdrop, the Apple ecosystem really does support this and just simply helps me make this as seamless as possible. I've also, as I said, tried to use handoff more recently on my granted very cracked iPad Pro, and while I haven't found it particularly useful in my actual editing software, as I personally like to keep everything all on one screen versus having several different screens for several different windows, it is very useful for having it as a file browser. For example, whenever I do one of those little speed ramps in my videos, I like to put a sound effect in to make it sound more organic. Before, I would have to tab out my editing software, find the file that I needed, drag it back into my editing software, and that created a lot more clicks and therefore a lot more friction. Now I can keep my files open on my iPad, and this is a really awesome feature. I used to use my MacBook screen for this, however, when I accidentally broke it, I used my iPad to replace it, and honestly, this thing has been pretty flawless. The only thing I really miss about my MacBook screen at this point is the portability. As I said, the most used product in my Apple ecosystem is probably my iPhone for obvious reasons, and the least used, so the one I could probably cut out, is the iPad Pro. But I'm not going to because it still adds a great deal of value to my life, and honestly, I just like it. But despite all the positive things I've just said about it, it isn't as valuable to me as other items. And that's okay. Building an ecosystem isn't necessarily about just buying a load of Apple products and hoping they work together in your life. I've typically found that keeping it small works best for me. My brother's currently in university, and he told me a load of people are using iPad Pros and those Magic keyboards instead of laptops in their lectures. Because they can. Like, realistically, a university student doesn't need something like this to do word processing. Realistically, they probably also don't need an iPad Pro, but regardless, for someone like me who edits video day in and day out, the MacBook Pro is a more suitable system for me. Overall, it's certainly not perfect. I mean, literally 2 of my devices are cracked at this point. Also, I really need to buy a new computer. If you are a MacBook aficionado, then please do let me know your suggestions. Overall, this system has helped me centralize my digital life, and again, helped me feel like I'm using one big device rather than lots of little devices, and then having to bridge them all together. The bridge already feels like it's there. And as I said, while I did initially reject the Apple ecosystem due to fear of getting locked into it, say I was using an Android phone but didn't feel like I could because I was using a MacBook, I do think in my case, especially as a digital minimalist, this is very much worth it for me. And whether or not it's worth it for you, well, that's up to you. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know, by the way, are you in the Apple ecosystem? If so, what brought you there? Feel free to let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading those. As for now though, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, then smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.